recording. I can't see myself. Okay, I'm in Chicago with my sister and her grandson and my mom and my other sister, and we're gonna go on a boat ride. I'll push the baby. Got the baby. Why is this one the most beautiful? I don't know. The others look pretty nice looking. Okay, I'm just fascinated by the building here where they park their cars. Must take a long time to get home. You gotta drive up there, park your car, and then you gotta get in an elevator and go up to your apartment. You know, it takes probably at least 10 minutes. So anytime you want to leave, to go down, especially if you're way at the top, you must have to plan. There's my sister and my mama.
By the end of this tour, all of you fall in love with Chicago as well. Does that sound pretty good? And that's if you look at the buildings. We'll practice that right now. Take a look at the building in front of us. You can learn a lot about a building just from looking at it. This one, you can figure out its name, right? Accident by design. As we come on back into Wolf Point, you know, we go under a lot of bridges on our tours. These are all movable bridges. What that means is they can raise and lower to allow for larger boats. That's hard for you to imagine. That's probably happy we have this bridge right here. This is what the bridges look like when they're up. You can see the pilot houses on the side of it. That's what they used to operate in from. This 50 years ago, when we had a horrible disaster here, which might have been the best thing that ever happened to our city. Nod your head for me if you've ever heard of the Great Chicago Fire. A few of you, yeah. So October 8th, 1871. It was an unseasonably warm evening in Chicago that night. 9 p.m. when a fire broke out not too far from where we are right now. Just off to our right. Don't bother trying to look for it, it burnt down. Mrs. O'Leary's barn is where the fire began. Now the first problem was the firemen got lost on the way to the fire. And there were 30-mile-per-hour winds that night that started to push the flames in towards the city. The firemen finally arrived. They did their best, but they soon realized they were outmatched. Their only hope was that this river would act as a natural boundary to protect the city from the flames. But remember the Union stockyards? There was so much hog fat on the surface of the river that night that the river caught on fire. Here's how the flames spread across the city. As the fire would burn inside of big warehouses, it would start to suck in air. That creates vortexes. So there were burning tornadoes inside of buildings that shot the flaming roofs off and sent the debris across the river, starting the fire anew. The fire jumped the river twice that night. It burned out of control. It burned for days. All of downtown Chicago was destroyed. We lost everything. Now, all of that is true. But there is a myth about the cause of the fire. Back in 1871, they blamed the fire on Mrs. O'Leary's cow. Remember, the fire began near her barn. They said that her cow kicked over a lantern, and that's what burned down the entire city of Chicago. Let's think about that critically here today, shall we? 1871, poor immigrant woman's animal. Do you think they were looking for somebody to blame? Maybe a scape cow? Would you like to hear the real cause of the Great Chicago Fire? Sure, she said. I'm glad you said something. I'm glad you said something. Sometimes people say nothing, we just stop the tour right there, so I appreciate that. Now, I told you Chicago started off as a city back in 1837 with about 3,000 people living here. The fire, about 30 years later. You can see both events during your lifetime. Here's how many people living in Chicago the year of the fire. 300,000. Imagine during your lifetime, your city grows from 3,000 to 300,000. This is the fastest growing city in the world at that time, and Nobody knows what they're doing. What's here before everybody shows up? Woods, right? So what are the buildings made out of? Wood. What are the streets made out of? Wood. What are the sidewalks made out of? Wood. And if you want to open up a lumber yard next to a turpentine factory across the street from an orphanage, no one's going to stop you. Very loose zoning laws is what I'm trying to say. So when a small fire breaks out on the south side of the city and the entire city burns down, is that some poor immigrant woman's cow's fault or bad city planning, right? That was the cause of the Great Chicago Fire, but like I told you, probably the best thing that ever happened to us, because a certain type of person comes to Chicago after that fire. Architects descend on this city, and they start to rebuild before the grounds even cooled off. By 1885, one of these architects says, you know, maybe wood's not the best building material. Maybe we should try something else. What about a steel structure? We could build taller that way. They invent the world's first skyscraper right here in Chicago, arguably a direct result of that fire. So you see, everyone, if it wasn't for the fire, I wouldn't have a tour to show you here today, right? We wouldn't be spending this quality time together. Wouldn't that be the real tragedy? I think so.
That's how they built the building so tall, how it held onto the title for so long. Still the standard. We don't mind. We have lots of other nicknames. Second City.
Okay, we took a river cruise down there, one of those, not one of those, but in a cruise boat. That was nice.